Greetings, greetings. How are we? Welcome along. It is Inspire and Be Inspired, weekly motivational conversations. Today, having a little bit of a shaky start. I was preparing to go live on YouTube and it decided to thrust me headlong into the stream and I wasn't actually ready. So as always, there's a little bit of a tentative start while I make sure that everything is working fine. It all looks to be okay. I don't think there's going to be any problems. I am really looking forward to my conversation with another esteemed guest as I bring him over onto the stream and say good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world, to Mr. Andy Compton. How are you, buddy? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, Andy. Nice one.
Good. Well, you've got a wonderful backdrop there. This has been such a crazy week for me. I'm going to start off by apologising already. I've come to this and you are titled Robin Holland, who is my guest from Thursday just gone. So let me change this while you're here on the screen. So now you have the correct name. The YouTube video should be fine. Let's just have a look on my phone. People who are watching us live will forgive me because I just want to make sure that everything is working cool. And Andy, if you want to share any links or anything, then you can feel free. I'm going to be good to go. I always make this as relaxed as possible, and every now and again these things are sent to test us, as I'm sure you yourself are aware, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, we're all good. We are all good. Right, it's just me and you having a conversation. Mr. Andy Compton, one of the most prolific DJs, producers, remixers on the Soulful House front. He has a long history in the game, and it is going to be my pleasure to find out all about that history. Our paths have crossed once or twice, but not nearly as much as they should have done, and we'll get to discuss why that has been and why it could have been. So let's just get into this, shall we?
Yeah, let's go.
Good. We're going to roll back the years and find out exactly where you're from, where you were born. You look like a little youngster. I may be wrong in my assumption. So what year were you born?
74.
Okay. So a few years, I have a few years on you, but you look good for your age, man. I'll give you that.
You as well, mate. When were you born?
70. I was
70. Oh, you have got a few years. That's good.
Just a couple, yeah. You know, it's the sunshine out here, and the good lifestyle, which
sure.
we both share. We'll get onto in a little while. Okay, so 74. I know you as being a Bristol man. Were you always born and bred in Bristol?
Nah, Devon.
Okay.
I grew up in a farm in Devon.
Okay, now you say that rings true to me. So let's go back then to the farm in Devon. Tell us about some of your earliest memories.
I guess just growing up in the farm, all the animals, all that stuff. Also being quite, the nearest neighbor was like nearly a mile away. So, it was quite hard to socialize when I was a kid, I guess, because it wasn't until I grew up a bit that I could get on a bike and then go into the nearest town and stuff. So yeah, I just grew up in the farm, really. It was pretty, I wouldn't say it's boring. It was nice growing up in an environment like that,
Mm-hmm. A large family, single child?
Just got one brother, 2 years older than me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
My mum and dad, they've always loved music and stuff. So obviously that was a direction, from their love of music was when I got into music and stuff. But yeah, it was a nice little upbringing, to be honest.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your mum and dad's love of music and what were their tastes.
My dad always kind of like rock stuff, like Genesis, liked a bit of jazz. I actually inherited his collection.
Okay.
Well, not that he died or anything, but he gave me his collection when he went digital and stuff. But so yeah, I got a bit of Miles Davis, all sorts of stuff. Basically, he loved his music big time. He's also a drummer in a band when he was younger.
Okay.
Like a Beatles kind of style covers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
My mum, she played a bit of guitar, but she loved music as well. So they basically love music, but they weren't like full on, like obsessed with it like I am.
And what about your brother? How many years did you say your brother's got on you?
He's got 2 years on me. Yeah, so he loves music as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's a bit of a musician, likes playing a bit of bass and stuff like that.
Okay.
His daughter actually is really into. She's only 11. She's really into music and stuff in bands and stuff like that. So that's cool.
Right. So, but being from a let me just get my pen and paper while I'm talking to you. Being from a farm background, was you clearly, as we will get to find out, with a rural environment, were your parents were they kind of focused purely on the farm? Were they quite cosmopolitan but working on the farm, or did you distance yourself from society?
They were totally farm. Running a farm is just such a mission. They used to get up at 5 a.m. They'd finish at 8 at night. So it was like, they were just always farming, basically.
And were you getting hands on yourself with that?
You know what? I used to help out a little bit, but they got to a point where they had to accept that I just wasn't going to be a farmer.
You had no desire.
No, I got into like playing the guitar and stuff when I was about 11, and that was it. The farming was over. I mean, I'd help do little jobs, but that was it. I was just in my bedroom every night playing the guitar.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, let's skip forward then to 11 years of age. Some of your earliest memories, how when you picked up the guitar and you started venturing further afield. Excuse the pun.
Yeah, well, my mum had like a classical guitar, and I can remember just strumming on it and thinking, wow, it'd be great to learn this. And also my uncle, my mum's brother, he's a guitarist, and he was quite a good guitarist. So when I saw him play, I was really inspired. I was like, wow, this guy's really good. He was playing like rocky stuff, and yeah, I thought, I've got to do this. Mm-hmm. So that's when I got into that. I mean, before I got into that, I was always into music. So before I started playing guitar, I was really into hip hop, like the early street sound, stuff like that. And of course, we all bought records back in those days. So I had quite a nice record collection of all hip hop, and I was a break dancer, like obsessive break dancer, Mm-hmm. Obviously, I don't do that anymore. And then BMXs as well. I get upset. I get into things, and I get so obsessed about them.
For some reason, I had BMXs in the back of my mind. I think you may have when I say recently, it could have been 5 or 10 years ago, started posting about BMXs. So I had that memory in my mind. Were you a good break dancer? What were one of your signature moves?
Oh, I was good at the windmill. That's my favorite. Yeah, I was a good break dancer, actually. Like I say, when I get into something, I won't stop until I've really done the best I can with it. You know what I mean?
Nice. So you had the full troop, was he rocking around with it's typical.
The lino and stuff.
I asked the question, body warmer, windbreaker, Nike.
Windbreaker, yeah.
Nike or Adidas, what were you?
I actually had a Millets one. When we grew up, I didn't have any money, so I had to do everything on the cheap. Like even to the BMX, I couldn't afford a rally burner. I had to get a Renault 20 one. It was a Renault 20. It was really bad, but actually I loved it. Mm-hmm. But Millets, windbreaker, it did the job. I actually did some graffiti on the back of it to try and funk it out a bit. But yeah, I couldn't afford a Nike one. They were like crazy, my friends had them. I was so jealous.
So that was it. The rally burner would have been, that was the what is it? Something that
iconic. Yeah, I've got two of them now. I've got the two best ones that you could get now. Just sat downstairs. I love them. I take them out for a spin. Everyone shouts at me, "Rally burner!" You know what I mean?
blue and yellow. That was like the iconic.
I've got the gold one. I've got the classic gold, super tough, and the ultra burner, the black and gold one. But yeah, there was it the rally burner that was blue and yellow that was sort of like quite common. Yeah, with the yellow wheels. Yeah, I actually went for a bit of about 10 years ago, I started buying them. I actually had like 7 of them in my 1-bedroom flat. It got a bit out of control. Yeah, I started doing them up and going crazy for them. But I kind of knocked that on the head and kept my favorite too.
Brilliant. Love it. Love it. Well, I've got some very good friends in Birmingham who are BMX fanatics there. He was like riding for the UK, and his son went on to ride for the UK. So, growing up around the 70s and into the 80s, they were the thing, weren't they? For me, just a few years younger, it was all about the chopper and the
the choppers were good as well. Yeah,
and then we moved into the BMXs. But anyway, let's get to the music. So we were talking about the guitar. You were into the hip hop, buying those sounds. So did you find yourself just emulating songs, copying songs, or were you quite good from an early age at coming up with your own compositions?
From like 11 till about 13, I was just learning the guitar. So I'd get like chord books and stuff like that. And all the songs that my dad used to play, the Beatles, all that stuff, I knew it quite well. So I used to learn all that stuff. I think the first track I ever played was the Animals, House of the Rising Sun. So yeah, I just started to learn the chords, simple stuff. It took me a little while before I could start playing lead and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So 11 years of age, moving into, was there a band? Was there ever a band?
Yeah, my first group was called Shock Treatment, and it was a 4-piece band with some friends. We did our first gig for the school fete on the bandstand in the lawn in Dawlish. It was a classic gig actually, and then our second gig was at the youth club where we got paid £2 between us, which we ended up blowing on sweets. But that was a good one. People were stage diving, people were stage diving and stuff. It was good fun, that one, and I sung some tracks as well, which probably a lot of people will never forget.
Okay, so not great at holding a melody back then.
No, I'm not the best singer. I stick to the guitar. Right. I can sing in my head.
Well, that's the best way. We all say in Britain, I've got a terrible singing voice. So all along, you're finding your own identity, finding the crew that are coming with you. Where's the next big moment that you think?
Well, I was in that band. Then I joined another band. It was called Tawny, and we did quite a few like local gigs. We had quite a good following. It was like metal rock, kind of Motorhead, that kind of vibe. And then I joined a band in Plymouth called Psychostorm, and it was more like funk rock, like more like Chili Peppers, a bit thrashy at times. But with that one, we decided that we were going to be super famous. So we all decided one day that we were going to move up to Nottingham, because Nottingham had a club called Rock City. Mm-hmm. And we were like, right, we're going to move up to Nottingham because it's probably a bit more chilled than London, and we're going to make it famous. So we decided just to move up there. I was working for HMV at the time in Exeter, and they managed to transfer me to HMV in Nottingham. So I had a job as soon as I went out there. I literally went there and stayed on a friend's couch for a few days until I ended up going to the dodgiest part of town and getting a bed sit.
Wow. So what year was this then?
It's got to be, I think it's going to be 91.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not very good at remembering the years and stuff, but I'm going to guess.
So it had gone on a little bit. So I was still fairly youngish, 17 years of age. So by 91, I think the music press was quite prevalent. Rock City had already been going for quite a few years, so it was well known. If you'd have said to me it was earlier, I would have said, well, how are you hearing about Rock City down there? But by 91, of course, it was.
Yeah, it was a well-known place, but of course. That also at Rock City in the midweek, they started to do like rave nights, with like drum and bass, and also Simon DK. I can remember he was playing there, the DIY nights and stuff they used to do on a Thursday. So I started to get a bit of taste of that stuff as well,
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you mentioned about the DIY, 19 to 91 was their height of what they were doing. Did you then get into the rave scene and the traveling scene at all?
Well, before I moved up to Nottingham, I was working in Exeter at in HMV, and a lot of the staff there, they were listening to quite a bit of dance music. So I slowly started to get into it, which was quite hard from being to metal to that. So I kind of jumped from metal to kind of like hardcore, because that was like the equivalent at the time, that sound. So I started to get into that, and then it was a slow transition to changing over. But the band I was in, we also started to do like a lot of gigs around the UK, and we did like a full on UK tour as well. And the last gig that we did in our UK tour was at Castle Morton, which was like,
wow.
And I didn't even realize what that was going to be. I just thought it was some hippie festival. We ended up playing on the Traveller's stage, and it was actually a really bad gig because I snapped a string and people started throwing cans and stuff at me. And it was like, it was really demoralizing, basically. It was actually the last gig I did with that band because I ended up quite depressed, wandering late at night on my own, trying to find what went wrong and all that kind of stuff. And I found the DIY tent, and then I just sat there for like basically about 3 days and
most people did.
I saw my life and flash in front of my eyes, all this kind of stuff. What am I going to do? And all that. Yeah. So when I got back from having an amazing time at Castle Morton, the first thing I did was sold my guitar and bought some decks. of course, anyone who knew me thought I was having a breakdown at that point. But that's where it all started, really, with the house music and stuff. Anyway.
Well, let me just say, after a very shaky start and a couple of false starts with the stream, I can see that everything is working fine. I'll say good evening to Emily and to Angel. Thanks for being here. They're commenting, so I know that the chat is rolling and I know that we are live. And I'll say again to people that are picking this up on the recording, please always feel free to comment or leave any remarks for Andy, because he'll be interested to see them. Okay, so I'll ask and you can answer as in-depth or skirt around the issue as much as you want. Castle Morton was clearly like an infamous, huge festival. I can't drag the number of people that were there from the depth of my mind now, but so 2 questions. Did you manage to make it onto any of the footage, and how immersed were you in that whole scene at the time, if you get the angle of my question?
I haven't seen myself in any of the footage, but I've always looked. But then I had a massive long ponytail, looked like a proper hippie. I don't know. There was a lot of ponytails kicking around in those crowds, you know. Well, after that, yeah, I got totally into that scene, and that was it. I just got so into it, you know. I quit the band when I got back, and I just turned into a full-time raver, basically. Didn't really have a job or anything. I don't know how I got by, to be honest. Probably some ducking and diving or whatever. But yeah, that was it. I started hanging out with a crew. I was kind of into like jungle and house music. You know, I was into both of them. But yeah, I just lived for it. Basically, I'd stay up all night, a few times a week. You know, hanging out with my mates, I used to go out to events on my own. I didn't care. You know, I was a bit of a loner back then. If needed be, I'd just go out and dance all night.
Did you get to read the book that the DIY boys put out, Dreaming in Yellow?
Yeah, I did. Well, Harry did. Yeah, definitely. I actually played at their last year at their 30-year of Castle Morton anniversary.
Okay,
and that was an amazing gig. We did it outside in the yard. They were doing a big gallery about all the free festival, and they were doing a film by Aaron, a guy called Aaron. There was a film they were doing about free party folklore history thing. I don't think it's been released yet, but they did a screening of it. So yeah, that was really great to be involved in that party as well. You know, the party that changed my life, basically.
Well, because you talking about being in Nottingham, going to Castle Morton, mentioning DIY in that book, they paint a brilliant picture of the scene, bedsit scene, what it was like to be fully immersed in that lifestyle. So that's gonna take us into 93, 92, 93, 94. All of the years blend into one, I'm sure. So how does life progress? Is there a job at any point on the horizon or not?
Well, at the end of 93...
weren't you working at HMV?
I was, when I moved to Nottingham, I was working at HMV, but they fired me after 2 months because they thought that I was stealing money. Okay. But actually, I went in a few days later, and the accountant, I saw her, and she was just like, "No, the money's still disappearing." So I got fired. I was on a YTS, so I had no rights at all. You know what I mean? And I would never steal from them. Of course I wouldn't. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But yeah, they fired me. So yeah, I was on my ass straight away trying to get job. No, not job seekers, that's what, UB40 and all that stuff, you know, signing on. So yeah, things got pretty tough. I guess, yeah, I was struggling for money and stuff. I sold a lot of things like records and clothes, whatever I had, you know, just to get by. But at the end of 93, I mean, it got to the point in Nottingham, I won't lie, it got too much because the whole scene, without going into too much detail, it got too much to cope with. Everyone was so messed up, you know what I mean?
Any books that you read, any documentaries, any interviews, they all cite it. You know, it got quite deep, it got quite dark, and whereas the fun side of partying in the clubs, very sort of, you know, recreational, it then started to get a completely different kind of
That's exactly what happened. So with my tail between my legs, I decided the best bet was to run back to the farm in Devon. So I did that. And when I got to Devon, no one liked drum and bass, no one liked jungle. it wasn't even drum and bass, it was jungle, wasn't it? Or hardcore jungle. So no one liked that kind of music really down there. So everyone, all my friends there, they were into house music. So, and house music was huge there. Every weekend there was parties in the woods. There'd be events at clubs. I mean, there are places like Exeter. They had a place called Vaults. Every Wednesday there was a DIY night there. The queue would be around the corner, and then on a Wednesday night after the club, there'd be a party in the fields. You know what I mean? And it was crazy times. But I totally jumped on that with the house music, and I just fell in love with deep house big time. And then, of course, I started buying that music because I was DJing as well. I got a couple of decks when I was in Nottingham, so I started doing all that kind of stuff, buying all that business. Found out about American, house music and the B-sides through listening to Simon DK and obviously Diggs and Wush and all those guys. And I mean, I totally idolized those guys. They were like gods to me, Jack, DK, Pez, all of those guys, but I didn't actually know them. But when I moved down to Devon, I'd given up guitar for at least a year or so. I really, I was a mad fast guitarist, like a rock guitarist. I just totally sacked it off. So I was around a friend's house one night and I met another guy from the Midlands who'd also moved back from Leicester. And he was a keyboard player. He was called Pete. He made reggae music. And so Pete also played the congas. So he started jamming along to my DJ sets. And we made good friends. And then we were like, well, maybe we should make some music. Because there was one studio that I knew of in Devon. No, there was two. There was a guy called Biff. I don't know if you know Biff. But in X, he does a lot of events and stuff, but he had a studio at his house, but it was really hard. I kept on asking him, but it was hard to get to that one. But I was also signed to a DJ agency in Plymouth called Children of Chaos, and they had SY85 and Atari. So me and Pete decided we were going to go down there and start making music. So we'd go down there every Saturday and we started making really dodgy music. And I bought myself an X7000 sampler, like one of the first Akai samplers, to 2.5 second samples or whatever. So we got that together. And then one night I decided, right, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to get a studio. So that week after, I had a friend who helped me do a business plan, and I did a business plan, got a full-on loan to get a small recording studio, a few modules, Atari, stuff like that. And I convinced my dad to give me the biggest room in the farm to set up a studio, which he totally went for. All I paid him in rent was a £5 organic box every week. Wow. We set it up with like alarms and like security alarms and everything. We're really serious with it. And me and Pete, we were like, okay, we're going to make a job at this. We're going to make music every single day. We're going to go to the farm every day apart from Sundays. So yeah, we basically started. I pick him up at 9 a.m. We go to the farm and we wouldn't come back until a song was finished every single day. And we did that for 2 years until we did our first release. Wow. So we had like hundreds of songs to choose from, but obviously, what it's like when you're starting off. You can't just jump in and say that sounds great. It sounded shit. The songs sounded bad. They were uncompressed. They were rough. I mean, they had a vibe to them. But yeah, so we did our first release, which was a Space Funk EP. But also at that time, I started sending demos to Pete from Diggs and Wush, and started sending them tapes basically. And he did a gig with Rick at the time, who's now Grace, Peter Diggs and Wush. They played in this crazy little town in Devon. And we went down to meet them. And I was super shocked because Pete was like, oh, we love this track. It was a cover of Lonnie Liston Smith's Expansions. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, we love this track. We want to release it. I just couldn't believe it. At first, I thought it's taking a piss because I didn't think it would be good enough, but he actually really loved it. And
Strictly for Groovers was up and running by then, right?
Just about, yeah, just Strictly for Groovers. Yeah, that was before the DIY disc started up. So yeah. And so I think it was probably our second release my first release was the Space Funk EP, which actually I've got a copy here. This Space Funk EP was our first one. It looks pretty basic. Look at the artwork. This one actually goes for up to 150 quid now on Discogs.
Wow.
I've got 5 of them now.
Did I just catch a glimpse of 95 on there?
Yeah, that was 95. That one came out. So I think just after that one, we did a release on DIY, which was called the Groove Orchard, which had 4 tracks on it. That did really well. And then we did a deal
under what name?
That was under the Rural Groove Foundation.
Okay.
Which obviously just turned into the Rurals, because basically back in '93 when I moved back, I started to put on events as well, like dodgy after hours illegal events at like farm places and stuff like that, and that was done as that's the Rurals as well, rural promotions basically. So I was doing events back then, but we did that one there. Then we did the DIY one, and then I did a deal with this guy who you probably know actually, Neil Macy.
Mm-hmm. I know Neil very well from Birmingham.
Yeah, he used to work for what's the distributor called? Obviously, he started Ideal, but before Network, that was it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I went up. Actually, he came down and visited us in Devon, and we did a deal. We started a label called Idea, which had a light bulb on it, and we did I think about 22 releases or 20 releases. I can't remember, but that's the Rurals on that label. It's like a joint label that I did with him. So yeah, we just started banging them out. We did our first album on that label, and that was we did that until I think about 99. 99 was our last release on that one. So we were doing a lot of releases. We were pumping them out.
Wow, I didn't realize there was that connection there. And there's sometimes I say when I have these conversations with people, sometimes we forget a lot more than we actually can remember. And me opening up by saying Bristol, of course, I know about the Devon connection. One very quick thing that I want to bring up, whilst you were doing this and DIY were doing all of their parties down in Devon, I had actually moved to Exmouth, and I was working at a car spares factory in Exmouth with a friend of mine for 3 months over a summer. And we used to go to the nightclub, the really cheesy nightclub in Exeter. I can't remember what it was called. I'm sure it began with a P.
It wasn't Vaults, the one that was underground, no?
It was like a proper kind of ritzy style.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember the name of that. I think I know the one you're talking about, though.
It's like fights every night in there anyway.
Yeah, so well, fighty for sure, yeah.
And then a few years later, I went back to Exmouth, to Exeter, and I was enlisted to put on a flower festival at Powderham Castle. So
nice.
I have a lot of fun memories of that part.
Oh, actually, my studio when a lot later, I had a studio quite close to the Powderham place in Dawlish, but on the outskirts of Dawlish. So Dawlish then.
Beautiful part of the world, yeah. But
it is beautiful for sure. But I mean, at that time, back in the early 90s, right, and even before that 91, 92, 93, it was nearly like deep house or house music. It was so mainstream that they used to have a bus that came through every week to pick people up to go to the raves. You know what I mean? Everyone was doing E's and stuff, basically. Everyone who was like 15 plus was jumping on that bus, going out raving. You know what it is like. Those times it was the football hooligans were all hugging each other, and it was mad times, man. There was a place as well, a club called Cultural Vibes. I don't know if you've heard of that in Plymouth, but that was like 1,000 to 2,000 people every Saturday, and that turned into like a cult thing to go to every week. And I managed to get gigs through my agency in the back room. I always wanted to play in the main room because it had a huge like 20k nub sound system. It was beautiful, but that was all like the house, deep house, all that kind of stuff. It was like every weekend was like an adventure, it was like at times that we can't even I don't know that I guess kids nowadays have that same kind of fun now, especially in Bristol and stuff, but It was like every weekend was an adventure. It was amazing. You'd end up at some crazy places, people's houses, in fields, all aircraft hangars, whatever, it was mad times.
Beautiful times. It is difficult sometimes to try and convey, and it was just it sounds corny, but we were so immersed in it. It was a way of life, right? A complete way of life. So one thing I just want to roll back to, we'll keep that moment in time where we are up to 99ish, but you were talking about how you really got into the deep house sound, discovering the Americans. Who immediately springs to mind when I ask you some of your biggest influences or some of your biggest inspirations that you heard and thought, yes, I want to go down that route?
Simon DK. I mean, he was like the Prince of Darkness. You know, I mean, his deep house sets were, his mixing was a little bit sketchy, but his song selections were still to this day. I think I know he doesn't do much now, hardly anything, but he was the finest ever deep house DJ for me.
And producer,
I don't know, it just resonated, you know, because
he wasn't playing. He played some of their stuff, but he wasn't playing all of their stuff. So, from a production point of view, who were bringing out the tunes that you thought, yeah?
Well, yeah, of course. When I started buying stuff masses at work, their B-sides, the dubs were just killing me. Devon, all the stuff on Strictly Rhythm, even Roger Sanchez, people like these guys, you know, they were doing amazing music. It's DJ Sneak. I know they're all cheesemongers now and stuff, but, you know, I don't know. That stuff was amazing for me. The stuff on Large, 95 North, I mean, you know, luckily, you know, I was quite lucky to meet them and get to know them, and they did a remix for us and stuff. But when I first heard their music,
you've listed there quite a few people who are renowned for the dirt and the grit of their drums. But yet as time's progressed, your drums have been not as gritty and as dirty. You're a more mellower sound. So where did that transition come?
Yeah. Obviously, people like Roy Davis as well. Got to chuck him in there because I used to love his stuff. DJ Pia, but so I was doing like a lot of sampled stuff. We were also doing jamming, but we had a multi-tracker. So we weren't recording obviously onto a hard drive, like, because there weren't hard drives that could accept the kind of, you know, we didn't have that kind of technology back then. So I'd have it synced up. So we were starting to make tracks start to finish with the bass, the guitar, the keys, you know, leaving in all the mistakes, whatever, you know. So the stuff on the Idea label started to stretch more towards jazzy deep house. So some of the early stuff is quite dirty and dark and stuff, but then it got a bit more jazzy. And then in '99, it was a bit of a transformation because I met a crew that were, you know, my ex-wife Marie, she was singing, a guy called Pete on bass as well. I was Matt Cundy. He was starting a label with me and stuff. He was getting into it full time with me as well. So we kind of went down a bit of a different road, which was a bit more like jazz funk in deep house kind of thing, you know. So yeah, I kind of, the sounds weren't so dirty. The beats were always there, but it was just the sounds over them, the music over them was a bit more mellow, you know.
Okay, so from a decision, from a conscious point of view, regards to the wider appeal and what would have been classed as success of releases, did you have that energy, the desire to go and try and, you know, crack some of the clubs, or was just like, that doesn't really interest me, we're just putting this music out?
Yeah, I didn't want to do any commercial sounds. I mean, obviously, in all this time, I've been doing this for 30 plus years now, doing music. Never ever wanted to do commercial or be big time commercial sounds, whatever. I mean, even more now, it's just, I just make music for me that I want to make. You know, I don't care about.
Did you ever have that? Let's pull it. You know, let's say Pete Tong, the Bible on a Friday night. Did you ever think, let's try and get this to Pete Tong, or let's try and get this to Ramplin on Radio 1 and play it and stuff?
No, I mean, we used to use promo companies and some people would pick it up, like, you know, so some DJs, like, I mean, people like Bob Jones and stuff, you know, there was all more underground stuff, really. I don't know. I think when I was really young, I had a dream of being super famous in a big rock band and stuff. But, you know, I think the whole selling out, it wasn't, you know, it works for some people, and, you know, and I guess if you want to make money and stuff, that's a good idea. But no,
your focus was purely on the music, what came of it. So it seems now that the band's getting bigger, so to speak. So did you start to get to tour more?
Well, yeah, I think my first international gig was in Berlin at the Tresor. That was in either 98 or 99. So that was my first international gig. And I wasn't really getting booked that much at that point. I was just really concentrating on making music and making a lot of music. And the 12 inches, they were selling okay. They were selling between 1,000 and 2,000 copies of each release. And we were doing a release every month. So, you know, I was banging them out for sure. And then obviously come 99, we had releases on Large Records, and a few other like Seasons. All of my favorite labels started hitting us up. Basically, we got the internet, and all of a sudden, started getting these emails of people all over the world. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you ever make it over to Miami?
The first time I went to Miami was 2001. The first time I went to the States was in August 2000, where we got booked to play at a place called the Knitting Factory. Actually, I got booked to play a DJ set. That was where another life-changing event was, but going to America for the first time. I mean, the guys who booked us, they were looking for us at the airport, but they couldn't see us because they thought I was going to be black. They didn't even, because there was no internet, there's no pictures, and every record just said the rules. It didn't say anything else. It just said the rules, Mm-hmm. So people just assumed, I guess, that I was black. But so obviously,
the Knitting Factory, West Coast.
In LA, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was I played there 2 nights running. That was my first little jaunt I did over there. Went there for a week. Yeah, and that was a massive life changer. Wax records, going out, blunts, all that kind of stuff. It was a bit of a crazy time. But yeah, when I got back to Devon, I was like, wow, I don't know if Devon's, I felt a bit weird, I felt a bit different. I'd had a taste of another world.
Small town boy looking out into the big world.
Exactly. And at that point as well, I was living in Dartmoor, in this little village, and on the edge of Dartmoor, of course, we had the studio set up there. We're making a lot of music, a lot of like tracks like Lush, which blew up in New York. That was another one. We did a release called Lush. And when we did the release, I just put loads of thanks to everyone, all my favorite DJs. There was a little bit there. I said, Masters Work, you don't know us yet, but you will do. There's like 100 names on it and stuff. But anyway, that release came out, did 1,000, everything's fine. Then all of a sudden, like about 6 months later, they pressed up another 500, and then a month after that, another 500. It just kept on going, and it turned out someone sent me a message saying Timmy Ridgersford just played your track 5 times in one night he was just stopping it and starting and putting it on, and everyone's going, it's like an anthem there. I heard that it was like the last track they ever played in the Shelter when they shut shop, and then of course in New York, all the New York DJs playing, David Morales, all those guys. So that really blew up, that one there. That was like our first really big track, And yeah, and we had a few others that kind of blew up as well, at that point, around that time. So it was all quite exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm. So we've already ascertained that you're focusing purely on making the music. Between you all, was there anybody, as the internet was progressing and the media and things like that, was there anybody who was like, come on, we've got to play the game here, we've got to try and push ourselves, formulate some kind of plan to make ourselves bigger without watering down the output, of course?
I think always the issue was the financial thing. I could never really afford to get like a proper PR company to push it and stuff like that. We did small things. Remember White Noise and stuff like that? We used to use a few things. I had a few opportunities that kind of blew as well. We nearly did an album on Ultra in America, right, which was obviously a big label. But due to my what happened at Miami that weekend, I kind of blew it a bit. It didn't go according to plan. But and also there was a few. When we did Sweeter Sounds in America, that really blew up in the States. We did it via Prime actually, and we played a big PR company that side. To push it, we went out for a distributor called Caroline, which was big back then, and I think it sold about 5,000 copies on CD in America, and it was racked up in all the shops and stuff. So that really got to a point where a lot of people were interested, especially soul music lovers in America. It turned into, the fan base was more, rather than house music, it was more like soul fans, you know what I mean? Places, people like in Atlanta and stuff like that. There was a shop in Atlanta called Moods Music that were selling so much of our stuff, just in one shop. It was crazy. And it was really exciting times. But then I realized it. I mean, if you listen to that album, the Head songs, that's when we started to go really jazzy. The first Rules album was quite tracky and a bit jazzy, but then Head songs and then Sweeter Sounds had its own unique sound. I was just trying
to see if I could find it in these thousands of records. Sweeter Sounds, you may remember this, was an album gifted to me by my good friend Giddy, who actually
I remember him.
He discovered you and said, you've got to check this out. And he bought me the CD. I think it was it would have been green cover.
That's Head Songs, yeah.
That's Head
The
Songs.
one with the stone on it said Peng on it, yeah. That's Head
the
Songs.
one. So that was the one that he got me. So that's 2001, maybe
2000. That one was
2000. So he said, and that was then my introduction to yourself. He gifted it me. So thank you, Giddy, for that. And because it was just a much smaller world as well back then, wasn't it?
It was, and if you remember that album, it sounded quite unique because to me it sounded really scrappy and messy. But I think that's what people liked about it. For me, it was always sounding a bit like it wasn't like quite as good as I wanted it to be. But now listening back to them, that sound of the multi-trackers, the hissy 8-track and stuff like that is actually quite beautiful. That thing. And then we went from that to sweeter sounds, and that's the one that kind of blew up. Because it had Lush on it, Window Pane, Make Amends, tracks like that. I even saw once. A roadmap of house music, and for Jazzy House it played Make Amends. That was the track for Jazzy House, so it was kind of like we kind of really pushed our own kind of sound, and that was people started to feel it, which was amazing, because I was buzzing. It's been in Devon, just a country boy in Devon, growing up on a farm, and then all of a sudden people are ringing me up from Chicago and stuff like that. I can remember one time Glenn Underground ringing me up, the phone rings, Glenn Underground saying he just really loved the music and stuff. I was like, damn, I couldn't believe it. Like, that's Glenn Underground.
That's because the thing is, no one ever likes to really do the comparisons and such, but you mentioned large music as well, naked music with JJ, Chris Lum, it was that kind of sound at that kind of time, wasn't it? Very much on that tip.
Definitely the naked music sound. That was a beautiful sound that happened just as we were doing that as well. So Bruno, I used to talk to Bruno a lot, and we were on the compilations and stuff like that. But it was a good time for that kind of sound, wasn't it?
But it was really great, pivotal, and the really bizarre thing is that it was 23 years ago, and it feels like 10 minutes, right?
I know, it's crazy.
So let me ask you a question for the nerds, the people who would like to know this. As you progressed, did you take a lot of more time in educating yourself with the sonics and the finer points of putting music together, or did other people get involved with that?
Not at all. I never even, not really. I've never really done that, to be honest. Literally, I never got taught properly. The person who really taught me how to produce was Pete, the keyboard player, because he'd already made reggae music, and he wasn't classically trained at a college or anything like that. We basically broke all the rules. We would have stuff in the red. Everything we did, was kind of like wrong, and it probably still is, I mean, I still have people telling me off the way I use Ableton and stuff like that, and I'm just like, oh, whatever. But yeah, no, and we just jammed, basically. We just jam music, and the crazy thing is when we jam music, say if Pete, I haven't jammed with him for ages, unfortunately, but when we jam together, we just start in the same key. We change key at the same time. It's like a kind of connection, and I don't even know where it comes from. That kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm. In here, in there.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's like something that's coming from the cosmos or something. Because I don't really think of myself as an amazing musician or anything, but I come up with grooves and they sound all right,
Well, that'll bring me on to the next point then. We will continue with the timeline because I do want to try and continue to capture the history. But let's jump to a general question. You are revered by a hell of a lot of people, and yet, and you have enjoyed some moments of great success. But I made a comment to you, and I think I even said in the description that I believe you've never really had that exposure and that the overall success that I feel you deserve. Would you say that's a fair observation? And if so, why?
Definitely, because every week I have people hitting me up saying, I've just found your music by mistake on Spotify. I've just looked at your stuff. I've just seen like 40, 50 albums, whatever, 40 plus albums. And they just like, wow, this is crazy. You know, yeah, I don't know. The problem is I have difficulty with bigging myself up. I'm not like, I guess I've got quite a small ego, and I'm quite shy. People don't really know it, but I'm quite shy in those kind of situations. So I don't know. I prefer things to go word of mouth, you know. And it is spreading. I mean, like on Spotify. So I know people hate Spotify, but getting quite a few people listen to Spotify, to the Rurals, to Andy Compton, whatever. And it's a great way for people to find my music, you know. And I make music for people. That's what I do now. And I've really come. My whole mindset's changed with all this stuff, you know. It's just like, I know that if I keep on doing what I do, that at some point it is going to blow up, and I don't know when it's going to happen, but it will for sure. I mean, I don't know if I told you, but I'm working on my 50th album, which I'm going to release on my 50th birthday next January, and I'm sure I'm going to get some kind of PR with that as well. I'm going to start pushing with that, and when people start hearing this stuff, I'm sure they're going to start going through and realizing all the stuff, because, you know, it's not just the Rules or Andy Compton. I've got other projects that I've done as well, like Compton Soul projects, and the Tibetan One Steps, the African music. You know, I think there's like 7 or 8 projects that I've released under. So there's a lot of stuff, you know. I just keep on going. It'd be great if, of course, if I could make a bit more money out of doing what I love, that'd be fantastic. Mm-hmm. But as it happens, I don't know, maybe I didn't really, maybe my mindset has never been, I want to be super famous and crazy. Because even like, you know, it's like when you start touring and stuff, it kind of exhausts you and stuff. And also if you're touring lots, you get paid okay, but it not only does it exhaust you, but you can't write music so much when you're touring and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm very grateful for what I've had so far and what I've got as well, which is, you know, it's like a dream come true, really. I mean, it's I love it. I love it when it gets to a point where your mum's really proud of you and stuff. You know what I mean? It's just. Also, I like doing collaborations with people. I like helping people as well. I like giving people advice about, you know, setting up labels or all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I do think at some point people are going to catch on and it will blow up.
Is that you've just stated you're a very humble person. You don't seek the adoration of others. Before I ask you a question, let me just say good evening to Jimmy. Good evening to Dave and Tracy. Thank you for checking in. Angel is saying the best things happen when you struggle. I believe it pushes you forward. Well, it does indeed. Andy's just back from LA, struggling now to stay awake. But I will ask you, and be as honest as you can be. Have you ever got bitter down the years? Has there ever been a frustration? Because you have been doing it. You've been doing it a long time, and I'll say again, you know, you are super talented. You've had all of these people hitting you up, and yet there's so many venues that you haven't played at in the UK that you should have been at.
Yeah, there was a point where I started to get a bit bitter, and I started to look at other people who were doing it that I thought weren't working as hard as me or doing whatever. And yeah, I did start to get a bit bitter about it. But then that's not a good space to be in, and I had to change that mindset. You know, I'm so not bitter nowadays. I've chilled out so much. But yeah, there was a point where, especially when you're really broke and you're thinking, God, you know, this isn't right. But then again, you know, I can remember the 3rd year Fabric birthday party. We did a live show on the main stage, you know. So, and also we did in 2007. We were after Prince released his album with Paper. We were like, I got hold of all of DJ Magazine and all those magazines. DJ Magazine put out our album for free, and that did like 40,000 copies just in the front of DJ Magazine. You know, it was at Mid-M and all that, and you know, so. Basically, it's down to me. If I want to do well, I have to keep on hitting away. I have to keep on thinking of ideas. Like, you know, it's just like Peng. I started Peng, and I was one of the first labels in the underground house labels to go do a digital label and stuff like that. You really have to think out the box to do things, and you know, that's where I'm at the minute.
You mentioned Peng, 20 years of Peng. In recent times, the words bandied around a hell of a lot, but you were using it way before. It was a
99.
Love Island thing.
Yeah, we started Peng in 99, basically. The first release was in February 99. So, yeah, that's like 24 years, right? It'd be 25 years next year of Peng. So that's my own label. Of course, there's a lot. I say we, because I've always had so many people involved in music, but actually I'm the only person left now. So I guess it's me. But, a lot of releases. Probably there was 60 EPs on vinyl, and then there's 130. I've just released 130 digital, so that and the 60, that's 190. There's like 50 albums plus. There's a lot of stuff on Peng. It's quite a mass of music, and also artists as well. But now I just do my own productions on it.
It is a truly incredible legacy that you've left and continue to leave. Recently, we were talking, as most people know, I'm out of the DJ game myself, but you gave me a link to some music to download, and it was just like, oh my God, every track was just like bullet after bullet after bullet. So beautiful. I've been a big fan of what you do for a long time. Even on Sunday, not Sunday just gone, the Sunday before, I played Gemini Moon. I mean, just phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, actually, moving to Bristol has been a real help as well, because the singer who did that, she's in Bristol, and then in Celestine, I sent you the Celestine album, right? And she sings with Black Box. There's 15 tracks that I've done with her for her album there. I mean, I'm working with some amazing musicians, and not just in Bristol, all over the world. I'm so blessed. People hit me up. It's amazing. People hit me up and say, let's do some music, So that puts me in a good advantage, rather than me hitting up, say I got hold of Barbara Tucker. She's going to want thousands up front for an advance and all that, She'll probably just ignore me, whatever, But I have amazing musicians, obviously in a different kind of context, different kind of, not better or worse, but just different to her, but amazing singers.
Well, let's get back. Let's get back to the timeline then, because I want to find out. We can't document it year by year, month by month, but as time progressed, is there a big gap between the early 2000s until you start to get into South Africa? Is there a bit more to cover before we get there?
Right. So my first experience with South Africa was in 1999. I got a phone call of a guy who was working I actually owned a label called House Africa. Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they were doing a compilation called Fresh House Flavors for a guy called DJ Fresh, and I ended up with help of a friend who was helping me, a guy called Jake, who used to help me with industry kind of contacts, and he used to work for Mixmag. I don't know if you know him, Jake Mansell. He used to work for Classic and all those guys. But anyway, he actually, I'll tell you the story about him quickly, because Jake, one time, we did our first ever licensing deal with Mixmag. It was on an album called Claudio Coccoluto. What's he called again? Coccoluti?
Claudio Coccoluto.
That's the guy. So we had a track on his album. It was a Mixmag album. I don't want to get him in trouble, of course, he's left him ages ago. But he rang me up and he said, we want you on this album. It was a track called Mama Sub. It was quite a bit of a disco funky track. He was like, would you do it? 14%, £300. I said, yeah. Put the phone down. I was jumping. I was like this, jumping. The phone rings back. And he's like, are you sure you don't want £500 and 18%? I was like, yeah. And he was just like, so how do you do your business and stuff? I was like, well, whatever. I don't know. I'm just new to it. And he said, well, come and meet me. So I met him the week after in London, took up all the contracts, everything that I'd ever done. He went through them, he kicked my ass, and he got me to email everyone to ask for statements, all that stuff. And as time went on, he trained me up with contracts and with the industry. So master contracts. He taught me about publishing, all of that stuff, basically, to the point where actually I spread that knowledge onto other people as well, So he really helped with that stuff. But yeah, that was Jake, who definitely deserves a mention, who's now a school teacher.
big up to Jake. Big up to Jake. Yeah, carry on. Sorry, I'm just typing. Someone asked me a question, but I don't want to ask it yet because I don't want to lose the train of thought. So 99, we started to go towards the South Africa
Yeah, so managed to negotiate a pretty huge advance for the back at that time. And I was shocked because I didn't even know that South Africa even heard of deep house. I thought South African music was just like African music. I didn't have a clue, obviously, how naive I was. So we did a track on this Fresh House Flavors. It turned out that it sold, I think, 180,000 copies.
Was it distributed by Soul Candy?
No, it was through WEA, I think, back then.
Okay.
No, it was EMI. It was EMI. So they were a subsidiary of the EMI. Soul Candy was like their House Africa's competitors. Basically,
Okay.
started just a bit after House Africa. Tim from House Africa was one of the first guys to bring house music into South Africa. He'd go to, I think he said he had a girlfriend in Miami who worked on the planes, and they'd go to Miami and bring back a load of records from Miami, and he'd sell them out the back of his car. Then they started a record shop called House Africa, and then they got a deal with the with EMI, and then they end up selling millions of CDs, basically.
Wow.
So
you were there basically from the off at the at ground level.
Yeah, and that the track, it was called Corker, that was on there, and that track blew up big time over there. Like, people have told me that they used to hear it. They call them taxis, but they're like mini buses that they get around on. Apparently, it was always banging out of all that Fresh House Flavors was being played everywhere. It was huge, like a huge compilation. And DJ Fresh, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, from South Africa.
I know the name. I don't know him at all.
Yeah, he's like Judge Jules in that big in South Africa. He's big time, like Vinny Da Vinci, all those guys. They're big time, you know what I mean? Like 3-4 gigs a night kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's crazy. But so that all that started there. And then after that Tim got back to me and said, right, let's do another CD. It was called the Sunday Sessions. It was all Peng stuff that was released on CD. It sold thousands and thousands. It was amazing. And then we did 2 other ones as well after that, 2 other compilations. Our last one we did with them was, no, it wasn't the last one, but the second to last one was called Peng Sounds. And it was a 4-pack compilation of all the stuff from, it was DJ mix compilations from all the Peng catalogue. So yeah, it started to really escalate, to the point where there was a bit of a frenzy about who was going to get me over, and lots of people started getting me. Oh, we're going to get you over. So many times I sat there and I just waited. I was
going to say, did you have your finger burnt by a lot of not shady characters, but people chat,
shady characters,
they never deliver, do they?
Yeah, and we're waiting for the flights. They never happen, and it kept on going on like that until 2011.
Why does that happen? Because I'm only aware of that from talking to @Jazz and him talking to me about circumstances that have happened down the years, not necessarily to him, to other people, and the fact that, what is it? People just trying to give themselves some false props, make out that they're someone that they're not.
Yeah, like wheeler dealers, chances, all that kind of stuff. A lot of dodgy people. What they don't realize is if you don't buy your flights early, they go up really expensive, and they keep on saying they've got sponsorship, all this stuff. You don't know what they're doing. They might get sponsorship, just rip off a sponsor because they're using your name. There's all sorts of, it's really sketchy, man. It's really sketchy. Literally, it got to the point where one day I thought, right, okay, I was just being divorced as well. I was as low as it could go financially. And I borrowed some money off a friend and bought a flight to go to Johannesburg. And then that was it. That's when everything started going up, because my first tour of South Africa was a massive eye opener. And I came back with some cash in my pocket, and I was like, wow. 2011, it took that long. It took that long, seriously. Even like back to 2003, we had people trying to book us for big events, for festivals over there. It just kept on falling through,
And had you been going back to the States, backwards and forwards much?
I had done the States quite a bit. I had been going to the States.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's all going along there. And then when did your son come along?
My first son was born in 2000, and he's basically 20 now. So 2002, he was in October 2002, and then my second son 2005. Mm-hmm. Of course, that brought some major challenges as well, because when my son was, everything seemed fine to me, but when he was a year and a half, he got diagnosed as autistic, and he didn't it didn't turn out that he was just autistic. He was severely autistic. So that was a massive mind melt. And of course, it shook my whole world upside down, made me want to make music even more, to be honest. And this is another reason why I've made so much music, is because my therapy is making music. If everything gets too much, I just lock myself into my studio, my phone's off, and I just make music. And that really, it's just, I don't know, I feel that's what I should be doing, and it makes me feel better. The buzz after making a really nice song, there's nothing like it. You crank it up and, you sit back and listen to it and go, wow, that stuff makes it.
Well, the memes is world off, music on. Definitely, relates to that.
Exactly. Yeah. So the whole autism thing, wow, that just started getting, because obviously when he was really little, he wasn't talking and stuff like that. And as he got older, it became more apparent how autistic he was. And my other son as well, he's autistic as well. But he's verbal. He talks a bit. He's actually next door chilling, watching the film. But he's 18 now. But the whole autism thing. Wow, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it brings its blessings. I'm sure you'll say to have your children are blessings, but it also brings so many challenges for you, right?
It does, and it does bring blessings, because through learning about disabilities, it's made my eyes open a lot about people, and people. Everyone's different. You don't judge people's mental issues, which you can't see. There's a lot of stuff. So I've really turned into a better person because of this. I'm not so selfish as I used to do. If I see an old lady struggling to cross the road, I'll do everything to help her. If there's homeless people who are like looking messed up, I find that I've turned into a lot of nicer person because of what I've had to go through with all the autism and stuff like that, and understanding about mental health problems, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's a great outlook to have, a great position to be in. I just changed the angle of the conversation, because Jimmy had asked earlier, off-piste, what's your door of choice?
I thought you meant door then. I was going to say, well, I like big wooden doors.
I say door, the DAW. I can't even remember what it stands for.
Well, I use Ableton because I was given it.
What does DAW, remind me what DAW stands for?
Digital something workstation, or digital? I don't know. Digital
I don't
workstation.
think it's workstation. Jimmy, help us out. So Ableton, but you weren't writing on Ableton. Well, you'd already answered. I think you missed the part of the conversation earlier. We we mentions. It is digital audio workstation.
Cubase it was. I was using first. Yeah.
Cubase back then. Okay.
Yeah, on the Atari, right? So it was just literally a sequencer which was synced up to the multi-tracker, which was like a Tascam 8-track with a time code on it. So that's how, and obviously the sampler as well in MIDI, everything lined up in MIDI and stuff, recording to a DAT. Every mix was a live mix, with the echoes and stuff. It was great fun. I love that.
That's like working with your Pete, who was from the reggae.
Exactly. He taught me all of that stuff.
Punching in live. You listen back to some of those reggae dubs, the way they did the versions. Just I sit listening in complete awe at times. So
I've actually rigged up all that stuff again now to start doing the live effects and stuff. It's such fun, and filters and stuff. So I've kind of gone back to that a bit. But I am using Ableton. But I started using it because I was given it by a friend who was working, who was distributing it, and he gave me a free copy. And then, of course, when you get into it, you just keep on going with it. I don't think it's an amazing thing. I used to prefer Cubase, but it works for me. I just use it to record in audio, so I'm not mad plug-in head or anything like that. I use outboard stuff. I've got synthesizers, guitars, plugins are great, but I don't really use that many of them, to be honest.
Well, you started to mention some of the artists, the singers that you've worked with, musicians as well in South Africa as well, the greats. I think you mentioned Kafele, and then Ralph Gumby, renowned for working on a lot of stuff with him. Some of what would you cite as some of the highlights of your lengthy career? Some of the biggest things that you, not necessarily the most successful, some of the things that you're most proud of that you've done?
Yeah, well, I was quite happy to have a song on 6 Feet Under. That was a good one, which obviously paid quite well as well, because that was a big sync deal. Lush was a big track in New York. That was lovely. Also, Window Pane was big in Chicago. It's strange that you have a song that's big in one city. You know what I mean? It's weird that it blows up just for those. We had a few of those kind of things. And of
So
course,
didn't you get any, excuse me for interrupting you, didn't you get any more continuation from the 6 Foot Under? Because the synchronization, that's where the huge money is. Would you ever thought of going down that route?
Yeah, I definitely would do. In fact, a remix that I did for a friend, I licensed that remix as well, Rules remix, to another 6 Feet Under episode. So I got 2 on there as well. So, but yeah, I really should go down that route. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I was in LA as well, to like talk to some friends and get some new contacts and stuff for that. Because that's obviously, if you can get your foot in that door, it's quite lucrative, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's been lots of great opportunities. Also, like up until kind of 2009, from 1999 to 2009, the main vocalist was Marie, who was my wife at the time. But when we split up, obviously we weren't working together. That's when I did my first release after we split up, was with Divinity. And that track did really well. And then the second one was Above the Sky with Cafelli, which came out on Go on Ralph's label. And then, I started working with loads of people then, you know, loads of vocalists and stuff. And it's been amazing. I can't even remember how many vocalists I worked with, but I've worked with so many, and they're all really amazing. You know, they all have their own magic, you know.
Mm-hmm. I always have very vivid memories of bringing yourself and Ladybird over to Vocal Booth Weekend. I mean, this year is our 15th event.
Oh,
it is a travesty that in all the 15 events we've only brought you once, but I'm not making any excuses. The facts are it's very difficult to get around to all the people that I love. But that was a great afternoon in the sunshine, right?
It was lovely. I can remember your son coming on afterwards. He was only little then, and what's he called again? Mickey, is it?
Mikey, yeah,
Mikey, and he played one of our songs as well, didn't he? He played So Alive. I remember that. That was an old track from Viva on that Viva album. But yeah, no, it was a great weekend, and the sun was banging. Then it was like, was it October or September or something? It was beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was September. Mid-September.
The end of September, it was good fun, that was. Yeah, respect for those parties you've been putting on as well, man. I should have been hitting you up, really, about all of these, but, you know, maybe when the time's right.
Well, that's it, you know. The thing is, so that'll come back again to the question about you not being pushing yourself, so to speak. But I'm still surprised that more people aren't coming and approaching you, because you know you do a great show. What is your show of choice? So if someone says, okay, we're going to book you, is it an hour and a half, 2 hours, you on the decks, you with the guitar? What would be the ideal performance?
Yeah, I mean, playing a 2 hour deep house set is perfect for me, but also with a live vocalist as well coming in involved. You know, I've been doing stuff with Shamrock, and we take it in turns playing the guitar, and people love that, you know. So any jamming, but yeah, it's quite the easiest thing is for me just to turn up with my USBs and play my favorite music, you know, which I'm just playing nowadays, really what I'm feeling, you know, which is either acid house or deep house, soulful, whatever, really, you know. Obviously, you know, it's like we've got thousands of tracks we can choose from, but just go with the flow kind of thing, you know.
So we need to get to the point how Bristol became part of your life then.
Yeah, well, I moved up 10 years ago to Bristol. I was with Ladybird at the time, actually, and we were, you know, I was thinking, Devon's, it's not doing much for me. I was down there because of my kids, and then Marie was going to move away. She was going to move to Portsmouth. She didn't in the end, or no, it wasn't Bournemouth or something. And I was thinking, well, she's moving away. What am I going to do in Devon? There's no point in me being in Devon. So I was thinking of moving to London, but then London's a little bit hectic, can be a bit toxic. And then a friend of mine who was staying with me from Miami spent a few days up in Nottingham. He came back and he was just like, he stayed a few days in Bristol, and he came back saying, oh, I love Bristol. It's the most amazing town. Of course, I've been playing in Bristol for years anyway, on the Thekla with my friend. Basil was doing the Fruity Antics on the Thekla, which is a boat in Bristol. I've been doing that for years anyway as a resident. So I already loved Bristol. It's got a brilliant vibe. And then I've just thought straight away, yeah, cool. And my friend, he went to bed, By the time we woken up, I'd already arranged like three viewings that day in Bristol. I came up to Bristol, the first place I saw, I just took it. That was 10 years ago. So I moved to Bristol basically. And the first night I moved into Bristol, of course, it's hard with the records and that. A friend rang me up and said, oh, let's go to a gig. Didn't really want to go. Went to a gig in Bristol, a place called The Canteen. It was a friend called James Morton. Well, he's now a friend. James Morton, a sax player in the Herbalizer he was in at the time. And went to the gig. Got absolutely blown away. One of the best gigs I've ever been to. That's where I met Celestine, James, Anders, who plays keys with me now. The week after that, I had all the guys in the studio. Basically, I set up my studio and they're all in there. That's when we did some like things like "Kiss from Above." I had Celestine. It was also like a soul song I did with her. So yeah, we I didn't mess about at all. I jumped straight in there. And then, of course, I'm in Bristol. I started going out to gigs 2-3 times a week. I was just talking to musicians all the time, and I get musicians in to come to the studio. My studio is just around the corner from where I am now, actually, my first studio. So there's so many musicians, it's unbelievable. So it really opened up the sound. I could do jazzy stuff, get people into features, all the vocalists, all that stuff. Amazing vibes. It was a good move.
Great. It might be an unfair question to ask because the guys can't really give their side of the story, but I don't recall seeing if you've been performing much with the likes of Deli and Sean. You guys have never really collaborated much?
I've played guitar on probably about 5 of Sean's tracks. In fact, he's just released one this last week. I've played guitar on it, but of course it doesn't say, when I do stuff with the South Africans, it's always featuring Andy Compton, but I'd rather it was quiet, I'd rather just be in the credits or whatever. I'm not bothered about being, sometimes in South Africa, it's great because it also helps promote me a bit over there when I'm collaborating with people. But I've known Deli for years and years. I first met Deli in 93. So I've known Deli for a long time. He did his radio show. He used to plug the rural stuff on his radio show all the time. Deli does a night with Sean, but it's just them who do it. It's just Sean and Deli. They've been doing that for years. That's fine. I go down to it sometimes. They're good buddies for sure. They're allies, but yeah, Sean does his own music. I do my own music. Deli's a DJ. So yeah, we're all friends. Everyone in Bristol seems to be friends. Everyone supports each other when needed,
But I would have thought there would have been the opportunity. Again, it's unfair for me to just project this upon there, but I would have thought there would have been the opportunity to do larger things on a bigger scale because, the talent is incredible there between.
Yeah, I mean, I've done events. I've done events. I've booked Deli quite a few times. He's booked me to play at his events. Sean's booked me actually for his events before. So we have collaborated before in that department.
Okay, so maybe it's just my ignorance then, just unaware of everything that's been going on. So
yeah, I'll be totally honest. In Bristol at the minute, the way it's been run, the people who are doing the promotions, the people who own the venues, they're not really giving house music a chance. But I'm not going to get bitter about this shit because I can go to South Africa and play at amazing events where where it's just perfect for me. I can go to the States and stuff like that. So I'm not going to cry about that. Of course, it'd be great if the venues in Bristol were like giving us a chance, but they're not. I don't want to bitch about it. It's up to them. Whatever. They're more. They'll you'll have people from Detroit or Chicago come through and play. That they'll give them the chance, and call them like the legends and stuff like that. But what it's like, hometown politics. I don't really want to get involved in it. I'd rather be totally in the studio making my own music and playing abroad if it comes to that point. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, you're in a great position mentally, as you say. Does that that'll bring me to the question I was going to ask when we spoke about farm life in the growing up from a very young age. You're very vocal about your lifestyle choices with regards to what you eat and what you don't eat. You're very vocal about that. How long has that been a big part of your life? And do you believe that it's going to be you're going to take this further on and try and push the message out to more people?
Well, in regards to like veganism, I only talk. I'm not a preacher about it, but if people want to talk about it, I'll always talk about it. I mean, I grew up on a farm. People don't even know that if a cow has a baby boy, they get shot in the head straight away. And as a kid, 5, 6 years old, I used to say to my parents, why is there a pile of dead calves? They would be waiting for like the guys who did the hunt. They used to pick them up to feed them to the hounds, because there would be like a side, I forgot what they call them now. They're just waste. They call them waste products. It's just, and then if it's a girl, that still take it off the mum. The mum cries for a week. I can remember hearing the cows crying all for the night for their babies. The babies get put in a little shed where they get fed fake milk, because obviously they're not going to give them the real milk because the humans want the milk. And they do that every year to the cows. Looking back, I don't, I love my parents and stuff. That's what they were brought into. But farming animals to me is so cruel. These cows were my friends. I used to love them. They used to run up to me and lick my face, and we'd be stealing their babies and shooting them in the head. And, it's a crazy thing. And also things like beef, when you think, oh, that's nice beef. Actually, beef is just old cows that have had 9 babies because they've been made pregnant every year by a bit of kind of a straw of semen stuck up their vagina, that they get so tired after 9 years, instead of living for 20 years, they just, when their milk level goes down because they record it, their beef, basically, they just kill them, And even the male cows, I don't know if you know, male cows don't go and have sex with other cows. They stick a electric dildo up their ass so the semen comes out. Oh, it's just such a disgusting thing that people don't even know all this stuff, And if they did know it, it's like Paul McCartney, he did a film once called If Slaughterhouses Had Glass Walls. That was what it's called. But obviously, if people saw what animals went through, they wouldn't eat it. But it's easy just because we're programmed growing up, to just eat meat. Meat tastes great. I won't lie. I used to love eating meat. But now
so where was the turning point then?
Well, for veganism, it was like 2009. That's when I went fully vegan. I was vegetarian for about another 15 years before that. So I was vegetarian before, but then when I realized I was being a hypocrite because I was still drinking milk, which was still killing the calves, then I decided to go full on. But back in those days, there was no like Beyond Burgers and stuff like that. We were on like nasty soya milk, and I really had to go cold turkey. Hence, I don't like that phrase, cold turkey, but I really had to give up cheese, because cheese was the one. I used to love cheese, but the vegan cheese back then was like rubber. It was like you could chuck it in the wall, it just bounce off, It probably, it wasn't great. So I literally had to go back to vegetables, which actually is the healthiest diet you can get, having, a varied vegetable whole food diet. It can't get healthier than that, It's like really good for you as long as you eat a bit of everything. But nowadays it's so easy to be vegan. You go into like even Sainsbury's, there's so much stuff. I mean, I just took my son for a burger earlier. There's a new place that's open just around the corner from me, and you wouldn't know the difference between it. It just tastes like an old school burger, proper. It was lovely, you know what I mean? Pretty fatty, and it's it's going to put a few pounds on it if you eat that every day, but it's cruelty free, and that's the main thing. That's why I'm doing it, because I don't want to hurt any animals at any point or minimalize. Obviously, people say blah blah blah. A mouse might get killed when you're making some wheat and all that stuff. You got to minimize the amount of pain and suffering.
You have been. I've noticed that you've been vocal, not in a toxic way, but as you say, you're not there to preach. Sometimes you just. I guess it's like anything, right? You sometimes the need to express yourself is there.
Yeah, I mean, it's about like all civil rights things that have happened through time. Things were just normal. Things have always been normal. Like, like hundreds of years ago, we had the whole thing that happened with like the Colston thing and all that. Back in those days, these slave traders were like heroes and stuff like that. Things. When you look back at times, you think, wow, that was acceptable. That was accepted. That all that pain and everything, all these things have happened. Sexism. People who hate gay people, all this kind of stuff, all these things. Obviously, times are changing, aren't they? And they're changing for the better. And it's all about education. We've just got to think about things a bit more.
You definitely strike me as a person who does a lot of thinking, but you're in a good place. You seem like you're in a very good place. You're very happy with where you're at. As you say, next year is 25 years of Peng. Then
50th,
next year's your 50th album, right?
Yeah,
and your 50th birthday.
Exactly. So I don't even feel like I'm 50, to be honest, and I don't know how, but I feel healthier than I did when I was 20 now. You know what I mean? I go to the gym every day. Um, I eat a healthy diet. I eat lots of salads and fruit and all that stuff, and I love life basically. I love people. I love my friends. I wake up every morning and I'm grateful for another day.
Right. Well, that's really lovely to hear. And in this short interview that we've had, I think we've covered the rough foundations of a really successful career, but there's still so much that we haven't covered. Are there any? Because I'm in no rush to get you off. Are there any major points that I may have missed out on? Because as I say every week, I don't like to go down the traditional route of reading the biography and then asking about all these things. I'd like you to try and, share me some things that you've never had the opportunity to talk about, or pivotal moments that you feel we should highlight, or have we covered a lot of it?
I think we've covered a lot of it, but yeah, all I can say is, to keep an open mind in life and to be grateful. I mean, that's the things that keep me alive. And that's, I make music now, and there's always been people say, oh, you should try this. You should try this sound. You jack in house. You should do, but this is really popular. I've just got to a point now where I don't even care what other people think. I just make music for myself. Even when I'm DJing, I will literally just play music that I like. I don't care if people come up and start moaning. I'm like, just go down the road, whatever. I know it sounds really selfish, but I've actually got happy with what I do. And I know actually people don't complain, because when I'm DJing, people seem to enjoy it. It's great, and I do a good job. I know I do. I do.
Well, let me ask you if someone were to again, as you say, happen upon one of your albums streaming, and an agent contacted you and say, mate, your profile should be through the roof. I am going to take you to the next level that you should have been at a long time ago. I'm going to be getting you a lot more work. You're going to be commanding a lot of money. Would you happily accept it? Or would you?
I'm happy to accept that. And I've been waiting for that moment, because I need someone to jump in and help me with that, because I'm really crap at promoting myself. So I need someone. It never sounds good. Oh, book me. I've done this. You need someone who believes in you to be pushing that stuff. And also, you've got to remember as well, without sounding bitter and stuff, a lot of the ways that people are getting famous nowadays is because they're dancing, they're lip syncing, they're on Resident Advisor, Boiler Room, stuff like that. It's a kind of vibe that it seems nearly toxic to me, and I don't, it's a weird kind of thing. I wish people would actually just listen instead of, oh, I'm going to watch a DJ tonight. Why can't you go and listen to a DJ, and and listen to the music? And that's why I'm just going to stick to my guns and just do the best I can. I'm not a very good dancer. I'm really crap at lip syncing. I will sing along to some of my own songs or whatever, you know what I mean? But
so there's no compromise. There's no playing the game for you if it's necessary to to have to shoehorn yourself into something that isn't really, because it's all, again, it's a word I use a lot. It's all about authenticity.
It's a game, right? You're right, and I do play the game. Actually, I do play the game because I've got Instagram, I've got Facebook, and I do put up little bits of my music. I have to do that. You have to do that. I know you do, but it's not to the point where it's over the top. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm over the top with it, but I use it as a promotional tool, of course. And if I didn't have that, then it would be quite hard for people to know. People are really interested in my music. They want to see the studio. They want to know when I'm going abroad, stuff like that. Also, I'm really into my nature. People like my nature pictures and stuff like that, So, yeah, if it is a game, and I do play it a bit, but I don't think I'm not ready to go overboard with that stuff,
What about if I said to you, by reading some books and listening to some podcasts and having a little, because there isn't a lack of belief of yourself, but by maybe allowing yourself to believe even more, would you do it and have a little bit more confidence in yourself and stand up tall? Because I've been in that position myself. I didn't used to like being in front of this camera, and someone told me, listen, you've got something great to offer, do it. I used to think people are going to say, why is he in front of that camera? What's he doing? What's he talking about? And at the end of the day, it's just like, you've got something decent to do and something to say. So a roundabout way, what I'm saying is, if you worked on yourself a little bit more, you'd maybe be able to push it more. Would you be happy to do that again?
You're totally right. You're 100% right. And if you've got any ideas, any suggestions or any contacts that you think I should be talking to, I'm all ears, because I'm ready to go for it at any point. I mean, I've been going for it for ages. I put in the hard work. Now it's time to reap the rewards. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, 50 albums out, a massive like back catalogue. I should really be working that. You know, I should be working that because I've put in a lot of hard work.
Well, I'll tell you now. Then let's say this next year, 50th birthday, 50 album, Vocal Booth Weekender 2024. Confirmed. I'll give you that gig now. I'll confirm that.
Excellent.
For you, right?
Let's do it. We'll make it special as well. If you want me to bring a vocalist over or something, we'll do something special.
We'll do it, mate. I'll throw the checkbook at you. You've got 30 quid.
Excellent. Well, you never know. If it all goes according to plan, it might be a few zeros on the end of that.
There you go. At least one more. Okay. Well, listen, and I've really enjoyed this conversation, and we could talk all evening, but I'd like to, end it here because I think we've got some great food for thought. People can go out and support you. Do you have the opportunity for people to subscribe through your Bandcamp?
Yeah, I've got Bandcamp. I've got the Peng page of Bandcamp. There's another thing as well I want to mention, that if there's anyone that is a DJ and a upcoming DJ and they can't afford my music, just hit me up. I'll send them music for free, whatever. I've been doing a thing as well where I give out free Bandcamp codes to South African DJs who are up and coming and can't afford, obviously, to download all the music, rather than get it for free and steal it or take it off YouTube or something. I'd rather give them a code and help people. Give them a foot in. Also, it helps promote my music as well, of course, if people are playing it in small venues and stuff like that. So yeah, if anyone wants to hit me up for some music and they can't afford it, then I'm more than happy to send some links and stuff.
Beautiful. So the Peng Bandcamp, does it have the subscription option where they can pay every month?
No, I haven't done that. I should sort that out, actually, because there's quite a lot of stuff on there. And I should also upload all of the old stuff on there as well, go for the DATs, but that's a work in progress.
It is. That's a lot of work. That's a hell of a lot of work. So I'll make sure, you can come back and in the comments on YouTube, you can post in some links that people can go and visit. For now, I'll just say, mate, thank you for giving me your time this evening. I'll leave you to go and enjoy some time with your son.
Yeah, nice one, mate.
We'll talk, yeah?
Yeah, big love, and thanks for everything.
No problem, brother. See you later. Wow, that was great. Again, a conversation that really I could have kept going all night, but, I think we've got the crux of it down there, and really, I cannot express enough how much of a talent Mr. Andy Compton is. So do get in touch with him, let him know how much you enjoyed the conversation, let him know that you want to get some of his music, and don't ask for it for free. Go and pay for it. It's pennies on Bandcamp. Here on the screen, I am asking everyone who isn't already subscribed to the channel to click on that subscribe button. It helps. And if you've enjoyed today's chat, then do give the video a like. For some reason, I began with some technical issues. So I know there's going to be a hell of a lot more people coming and checking out the recording than managed to see this live. And I say thank you to Jimmy and to Angel and to Emily for your comments throughout. Love you guys for that. So everybody, I will be back next week with another conversation. If you've recently subscribed, I say thank you very much. I did see Mark Johnson had jumped onto the stream earlier with his subscription. Or the Access crew on the right-hand side. Big respect to you guys. And of course, as always, if you need graphics or anything website or hosting related, then do get in touch. I'm your man. Enjoy the rest of the week, guys. Be good now.